Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the entrance of the containment habitat, watching the three Carvathi cubs tumble over each other in their play. The species was classified as apex predators on their homeworld of Carvath Prime, with adults standing nearly 3 meters tall and possessing retractable claws that could slice through reinforced steel. The Galactic Council had been hesitant to allow humans anywhere near the conservation program, but after the Zenthari handlers had failed for the third time, they had reluctantly agreed to let Earth send a representative. The other species in the facility thought humans were insane. The Zenthari, themselves formidable warriors, had tried to use dominance and force to control the cubs. It had ended with injured handlers and traumatized animals. The Palexians had attempted a purely scientific approach, using automated feeding systems and minimal contact. The cubs had become aggressive and antisocial. Now it was humanity's turn, and Sarah knew that every alien eye in the research station was watching her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She pulled on her reinforced gloves, specially designed with sensors that could detect pressure and temperature while still protecting her hands from those razor-sharp teeth. The material was tough but had enough give to feel natural. Sarah had learned long ago that working with predators, whether from Earth or across the galaxy, required understanding their language, and that language was rarely spoken with words. The habitat door slid open with a soft hiss. The cubs immediately stopped their play, their 6 eyes swiveling to focus on her. Each cub was already the size of a large dog, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep purple to bright orange depending on their mood. Right now they were showing cautious yellow, a sign of uncertainty. The largest of the three, whom Sarah had named Striker, took a step forward. His tail, lined with bony protrusions, lifted slightly in a defensive posture. Sarah didn't make eye contact. That was rule number 1 with predators. Direct eye contact meant challenge, and she wasn't here to challenge anyone. Instead, she sat down cross-legged on the floor, making herself smaller and less threatening. She could hear the monitoring team's confused murmurs through her earpiece, but ignored them. The Zenthari observer, Commander Threxis, was probably having an aneurysm watching a human make herself vulnerable to 3 predator cubs. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of synthesized meat, specially formulated to match the Carvathi's nutritional needs. The smell caught their attention immediately. Striker's nostrils flared, and the other 2 cubs, whom Sarah called Dash and Little One, crept closer. She tossed the meat gently, not toward them but to the side. It was an invitation, not a demand. Striker pounced on it immediately, his movements fluid and precise. While he was distracted, Little One, the smallest and most curious of the 3, approached Sarah. The cub's scales rippled with swirls of yellow and green, curiosity mixed with caution. Sarah remained still, letting the cub investigate her on its own terms. She'd learned this working with big cats at a conservation center in Borneo years ago. Patience was everything. Little One sniffed at her boot, then her knee. Sarah slowly extended her gloved hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. The cub sniffed it carefully. Then, with the lightning-fast reflexes that made Carvathi such effective hunters, Little One's mouth opened and clamped down on her hand. The pressure sensors in the glove lit up, registering the bite force. It wasn't a full attack, just a test bite, the way young animals explore their world. But those teeth were sharp, and even through the reinforced material, Sarah could feel the pressure points. The monitoring team gasped collectively through her earpiece. Commander Threxis was already barking orders to prepare the medical bay. But Sarah didn't pull away. Pulling away would trigger the prey response, make the cub bite harder. Instead, she did something that made perfect sense to her but seemed completely illogical to every alien watching. She let out a loud, exaggerated yowl of pain. Ow, wow! The sound was dramatic, almost theatrical. It wasn't a scream of terror, but rather the kind of yelp a littermate might make during rough play that had gone too far. The effect was immediate and startling. Little One's eyes widened in all 6 sockets, and the cub released her hand instantly, stumbling backward. The scales shifted rapidly to a pale blue, the Carvathy equivalent of shock and regret. Sarah stayed calm, pulling her hand back slowly and cradling it against her chest. She made a soft, low sound in her throat, something between a grunt and a hum. It was the sound the mother Carvathy made in the video files Sarah had studied, a sound of reassurance, but also of teaching. She wasn't angry, but the cub needed to understand boundaries. Little One crouched low, tail tucked, head tilted in what was clearly a submissive posture. The cub made a small chirping sound, high-pitched and uncertain. Sarah waited a few heartbeats, then slowly extended her hand again, this time with the palm up, an offering of trust. The cub hesitated, looking at the hand, then at Sarah's face, then back at the hand. Finally, Little One approached and gently pressed his snout against her palm, no teeth this time. Just a soft touch. Sarah felt her heart swell with triumph. This was the breakthrough. This was communication. Through her earpiece, she could hear stunned silence, then suddenly everyone was talking at once. Commander Threxus was demanding an explanation. Dr. Velox, the Palexian behavioral specialist, was asking for a replay of the footage. Even Director Qualix, who ran the entire conservation facility, had joined the channel to witness what was happening. Sarah ignored them all. She had 2 more cubs to win over. Stryker had finished his meat and was watching the interaction with keen intelligence. Dash, the middle cub, was approaching now, drawn by curiosity. Sarah produced another piece of meat, this time offering it directly from her hand. Dash approached cautiously, took the meat gently, and retreated to eat it. Over the next hour, Sarah continued the careful dance of building trust. She played with them using a reinforced rope toy, letting them win tug-of-war games. She mimicked their body language, showing them she understood their signals. When Stryker got too rough, she used the same Yowl technique, and once again, the cub backed off immediately, surprised by the feedback. The key, Sarah realized, was that the cubs had never received proper social feedback. In the wild, their mother would teach them boundaries through similar vocalizations and gentle corrections. The automated systems couldn't do that. The Zenthari's dominance approach had only made them fearful and defensive. But Sarah's method, treating them like what they were, young animals learning to navigate their world, was working. By the end of the session, all 3 cubs were comfortable around her. Little One even dozed off with his head resting near her leg, scales showing a contented deep green. Sarah stood slowly, careful not to wake him, and exited the habitat. The monitoring room was packed when she arrived. Commander Threxus stood with his 4 arms crossed, his reptilian face unreadable. Director Qualix, a floating jellyfish-like being, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that Sarah had learned indicated deep thought. "Explain," Threxus demanded. Sarah pulled off her gloves and flexed her hand. There were no injuries, just some pressure marks that would fade quickly. "I used basic behavioral psychology," she said simply. "When Little One bit too hard, I provided immediate feedback in a language he understood, a pain vocalization. It's how cubs learn bite inhibition from their siblings and parents. They play fight, someone gets hurt, they yelp, and the biter learns to be more gentle." "But you weren't actually hurt," Dr. Velox observed, his tentacles waving with confusion. "No," Sarah agreed. But the cub didn't know that. The sound was enough to trigger the social response. "Carvathy are pack hunters in the wild. They have empathy, emotional bonds. Little One didn't want to hurt a potential pack member. He just didn't know his own strength yet." Director Qualix pulsed with colors Sarah didn't recognize. Fascinating. The human used deception as a teaching tool. "Not deception," Sarah corrected gently. "Communication. I spoke in a language they understood. Earth has dozens of species that use similar techniques. Dogs, cats, primates, even some birds. Young animals need feedback to develop proper social skills. You can't force respect from a predator. You have to earn it and teach them at the same time. Threxus made a rumbling sound that might have been laughter or disagreement. Your species continues to surprise the galaxy. You should not have survived your own world, surrounded by predators. Yet you not only survived, you befriended them, and now you teach alien apex predators using the same methods. Sarah smiled. We learned a long time ago that the best way to survive alongside predators is to understand them. Fear them, yes. Respect them, absolutely. But also recognize that they're not so different from us. They want safety, food, social bonds. They want to learn and play. The universe is big and full of dangerous things, but most creatures, human or alien, just want to live their lives. My job is to help these cubs learn how to do that successfully. Over the following weeks, Sarah continued working with the cubs. She taught them to respond to recall signals, to accept medical examinations, to interact safely with handlers. The fake Yowl became one of many tools in her repertoire, used whenever boundaries needed to be reinforced. The cubs thrived under her care, developing into healthy, well-adjusted young Carvathi. The Galactic Council took notice. Soon, other facilities were requesting human handlers for their conservation programs. It turned out that humanity's long history of domesticating and working alongside Earth's predators had given them unique insights into animal behavior across the galaxy. Little One never forgot that first lesson. Even as he grew into a massive adult Carvathi, he remained gentle with his handlers, always careful with his teeth. And sometimes, when he was playing too roughly with his own cubs years later, Sarah would hear him make a sound remarkably similar to that fake Yowl, teaching the next generation the same lesson she had taught him. In the end, it wasn't humanity's weapons or technology that impressed the galaxy. It was their capacity for empathy, their understanding that strength and gentleness could coexist, and their willingness to speak in whatever language was needed to build bridges across the stars.